And you can begin.
Good morning. I'm Mary Lou Halverson, the President and CEO of the New Jersey Restaurant and Hospitality Association. Thank you for joining us today for our discussion with New Jersey congressional members and business owners to discuss the dire situation our industry is in, as well as the immediate need for assistance from Washington and liability protection. We have so many of our senators and Congress representatives here joining us. Due to the activity in their committee meetings, they will be hopping on and off, and we will be following up with them. Many of them have been extremely supportive of our members. They have called us throughout this entire pandemic asking how can they help. And I ask that they continue their work before the holiday to get a relief package that includes support for the hospitality industry. Please do not let perfect stand in the way of getting something done before the new year. Every day, more small business permanently close in New Jersey. 36% of hospitality businesses do not expect to be in business next year. And that does not include the ones that have already closed. Also, this does not just impact business owners, but the 500,000 hotel and restaurant employees here in New Jersey. Without additional PPP, 78% of business owners are expected to lay off more employees. Restaurants and hotels mostly hire from within their community. These are New Jersey jobs and New Jersey residents, and they need your help. Before we turn to our distinguished senators and congressional members, Sean Kennedy from the National Restaurant Association and Troy Flanagan from the American Hotel and Lodging Association, both organizations have been doing great work for us down in DC, would like to say a few words. We will then go to Senators Menendez and Booker, and our congressional members, Congressman Gottheimer, Congresswoman Sherrill, Congressman Kim, Congressman Malinowski, and I believe Congressman Smith is also joining. After, we will hear from Kirk Ruoff from the Turning Point and Mayor Chetta of Infinity Hotel Group to talk about why we need assistance now. I am going to turn it now, and then I'm going to turn it over to Marshall just for a little housekeeping on press. Marshall? He's not on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mary Lou. So what we'll do for, I know we have a lot of members of the press on. After everyone is finished their comments, we'll start a Q&A portion. I already see a hand raised. So just please utilize the raise hand function and we will unmute you one at a time based on who we see first. We will unmute you to ask your question. If for whatever reason you have a question for a specific member of Congress or one of the senators and they've hopped off for one of their committee meetings by then, feel free to just shoot me an email and we'll be happy to connect you with the respective press secretaries. And as for TV affiliates, if anyone would like the full video recording of this to make it easier for you to cut a segment from, feel free to just chat me in the box or I'll put my email in the box and we'll be happy to provide that for you afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. I'm going to turn it over to Sean Kennedy, Executive Vice President of the National Restaurant Association.
Good morning. Thank you, Mary Lou. Thank you to the electeds that are on this. There are a lot of different political views. What everyone agrees on is the importance of the restaurant industry. It is one of the many things that make New Jersey such a great state. But we've been in an economic freefall. You all know a sad fact that Hoboken, New Jersey was the first city to shut down indoor dining March 14th. Feels like an eternity ago, but it's almost 9 months ago. Hoboken, New Jersey, and then from there it spread to nationwide. During that period, the restaurant industry, which is our nation's second largest private sector employer, we were the first to be shut down. We've seen unprecedented economic loss. No other industry has lost more jobs and more revenue than the restaurant industry. Many of you are seeing this and you are aware of restaurants that break your heart every time you realize they're closing down. The average restaurant that is shuttered permanently has been serving the community for 16 years. and 16% of those restaurants that have shuttered have been in existence for 30 years. What that really says to us is that this is not just that the tide waters are high, the flood waters are high, and they are taking down beloved franchises, chains, independents. Nobody is immune from this. From our perspective, the worst part of it is that things are actually on path to get slightly worse. Indoor dining is being shut down in now 8 states nationwide, so many communities, including many in New Jersey. Outdoor dining is becoming less of an option, obviously, as it gets colder. Restaurants have reported that their average costs are going up as a percentage of profits. We're spending more on training, on certification, on cleanliness standards and hygiene and new technologies, even as we are seeing fewer customers walking in the door. The solution, obviously, what we've been calling for from the beginning is a industry-specific solution from Congress on behalf of the nation's second largest industry. Mary Lou put it really well. One of the biggest frustrations for us is you have Democrats who are very principled in their focus on why a larger bill is necessary, Republicans equally principled on why they want to see a smaller bill with no means of compromise. Instead, we are still working off PPP, an 8-week program that is extending now as a very small Band-Aid for a 9-month pandemic. We are really encouraged by the notion of this proposal that's come out from House and Senate moderates, $908 billion, a second round of PPP, funding for state and local governments, liability protections to ensure that good actors don't see frivolous lawsuits. That is, if we can end the year with that, it is going to allow so many restaurants to move forward to survive the winter months. We view this as a down payment on a larger recovery plan that we know the leaders who are on this call will be looking for next year. But to be quite honest, if Congress leaves town without doing anything and doesn't come back to really move legislation until President-elect Biden is sworn in January 21st, thousands more restaurants will close. To our estimate, we just released this data yesterday, 110,000 restaurants nationwide have closed. That's an increase of 10,000 more since our last survey just in September. The situation is dire. It's getting worse. We really appreciate the leadership of many that are on this call in trying to work for a solution. But right now, I know that Congress is on track to adjourn around the end of next week. If they do that without at least passing a second round of PPP, it's going to be a smaller number of people that will be joining this call, which is going to be such a travesty moving forward. But we really appreciate the leadership of Mary Lou and the New Jersey Hotel and Lodging Association, as well as the electeds who are on today. We know we can work with you, and we really appreciate your time and attention today.
Sorry, thank you, Sean. And I see we have so many more of our delegation, Senator Booker and Congressman Smith, my congressman, and Congressman Gottheimer, who I know is part of the caucus. I appreciate each and every one of you because, like I said, you've all reached out, whether it's to me or my board members, and I will go against anybody and just say we have a great group representing us in Washington, so thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Troy Flanagan for some brief comments from the American Hotel and Lodging, and then we'll go to our senators.
Thank you, and good morning, Mary Lou, and thanks for organizing this event. Good morning to the members of the delegation. I want to start by just sharing 3 quite startling statistics, piece of data from both publicly available information and industry surveys about the impact that the pandemic is having on the hotel industry and most importantly, our employees. Every hour Congress doesn't act, hotels lose 400 jobs, 400 jobs an hour. 4 out of 10 hotel employees are still not working, and our industry employment rate is at least 4 times that of the national average. 2/3 of hotels remain at or below 50% occupancy, which is the threshold by which most hotels can break even and pay their debt. When we look to DC, our biggest concerns remain around access to liquidity and debt service, and importantly, liability protection, which I know is up for discussion on the table. What we need from Congress is legislation focused on the primary goals of retaining, rehiring, and protecting hotel workers, as well as ensuring that hotels remain in business for workers when travel returns to pre-pandemic levels. The hotel industry and AHLA supports the progress made by the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus of recent days. A special thank you to Congressman Gottheimer and Congressman Smith for your work with the caucus to reach a compromise before the end of the year. This proposal helps break the logjam, the partisan stalemate in Washington. Without action from Congress, half of US hotels could close with massive layoffs in the next 6 months, half of hotels in the US. Waiting until the next Congress to convene is untenable for our crippled industry. A relief bill before the end of the year would be a critical lifeline for our industry to help us retain and rehire the people who power our industry and your communities and your economy. That's why we urge Congress to come together and swiftly enact a bipartisan and in a bipartisan manner, find cohesive, comprehensive solutions to move our country forward through this crisis. Thank you, Mary Lou, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. And then we'll just go right to Senator Menendez.
Well, good morning, everyone. As many of you know, I often talk about the diversity of New Jersey's many strengths. And there's perhaps no greater example of the many cultures alive and thriving in New Jersey than through the restaurant industry. On any given day, you can eat an all-American meal at one of our many iconic diners. You can sample some of the best Italian food around. You can indulge your taste buds in an authentic Indian meal. And I appreciate never having to travel too far to enjoy a Cuban staple like ropa vieja. So that's one of the great elements in our state. But behind every delicious dish our state has to offer are the people who work tirelessly to cook it, plate it, and serve it. Indeed, as you all know, the food service industry represents about 8% of all employment in New Jersey. That's nearly 350,000 jobs. And in 2018 alone, consumers spent about $18 billion in New Jersey restaurants. So those are some very eye-opening figures. Our restaurants are part of who we are, and the pandemic, has been pointed out, has left many on life support. I think you all know how I feel about the Trump administration's botched response to this pandemic. And in an ideal world, this crisis would already be largely behind us. But the truth is that the coming weeks and months are going to be some of the toughest we have seen yet, and that's just a reality we have to face. Many restaurants have made admirable and creative efforts to retool in the hopes of surviving the catastrophe. They've ramped up their takeout services. They've expanded their outdoor dining areas. They have in large part abided by the social distancing measures needed to keep people safe. But many of them are hanging by a thread. And too many have already, as Sean pointed out, closed their doors, especially smaller businesses. And all the people who work in these restaurants, the cooks, the servers, the hosts, the dishwashers, and so on, they're all out of work. So as colder temperatures drive people indoors and produce higher transmission rates nationwide, this challenge is ever growing. So that's why I have joined my colleagues, and I think it says a lot to the industry. It's very rare that you can get so many of us on listening to each other, much less talking to all of you at the same time. But it speaks volumes of the importance we think the industry has. That's why I have co-sponsored the Restaurants Act. I believe it's in our nation's interest to pass it without delay. As you all know, create a new $120 billion revitalization fund for America's independent restaurants, which could be used for a wide range of expenses, including payroll and benefits, food, utilities, rent, maintenance, supplies, to keep restaurants afloat. So as we are waiting for that safe day when we can all dine at our favorite restaurants again, to take our spouses out for a day, to take a break from cooking at home, which I don't do very well, to celebrate a special occasion or simply to enjoy a good meal with our families, we got to make sure that there are still restaurants that will be there at the end of the day. The House has already passed the Restaurants Act with strong bipartisan support. I'm going to keep pushing my colleagues in the Senate to follow suit. That's why I joined Senator Sinema's letter to the negotiators, particularly to the leadership. And that's why I have weighed in with both Senator Schumer's Manchin and Warner on this specific issue, as they are on the Senate side negotiating on the package that is before us. It's long past time that we get together on a COVID bill, but I also would suggest to all of you that we need a robust package that, yes, helps the restaurant industry and hospitality industry, but also extends federal assistance to other struggling small businesses, allows businesses that receive PPP loans to deduct their business expenses, including those that are forgiven. That's why I've co-sponsored the Small Business Expense Protection Act to do just that. And to be effective, a stimulus bill also has to extend rental and eviction protections for residents, expanded unemployment benefits for the millions out of work, and food assistance for those going hungry. Because at the end of the day, we also need to have patrons who can go to your restaurants and pay. So if we keep you open, but there aren't enough people who can actually afford to go to these restaurants, I think it would be a Pyrrhic victory. So I look forward to making this happen. The last thing I will point out, I appreciate Sean's remark. Mary Lou, I appreciate the perfect not being the enemy of the good, but I want to be very honest. This is a down payment because it certainly doesn't meet the ultimate need. And I don't want to suggest that it does, because we'll be on some other Zoom at some other time and you'll all be calling for more assistance. So I get it that it's a down payment. I get it that we're at the end of the Congress, but I also want to make a very big exclamation mark that it's far from what we ultimately need to achieve the collective goal that we all want to see. I look forward to helping you make it happen in the Senate, and I will leave you with that.
Thank you so much. Senator Booker?
Yeah, I'm grateful. And to you, Mary Lou, thank you for convening this. Clearly, as Bob said, you have so many of my colleagues on this because we understand the urgency of the industry. We are in a crisis in our state. In fact, it's a crisis in our state that's greater than most. We in New Jersey have lost 1 out of every 1,000 people. This impact is crushing, and particularly Black and brown communities, which are seeing a devastating impact on the health of so many folks. Many of us on this call, most of us have had friends that have died, have had people who've been in hospital on ventilators, and that has a rippling effect. There is a rental crisis in our state. I'm seeing it. Families that I know are doubling and tripling up right now. My mentee's family in Newark doubled up, and then no way to socially distance. The entire family got COVID, and my mentee's mother had to go into the hospital with it. It is having a crippling effect on our local governments, as we are seeing a massive crisis with cities and counties in our state potentially having to lay off thousands and thousands of public sector workers that we actually really need in a time of great crisis. Our hospitals and senior care facilities are strapped and hit right now. And so I know everyone within this organization knows the grandeur of the crisis we're facing right now. And the stories of people losing their lives are tragic, as are the stories of people losing their livelihoods. There are a huge percentage of New Jersey businesses that will not open again, as you all have already detailed. And this is outrageous. We have businesses that have been in families for generations that are now facing never opening again. And that deeply affects not only business owners, but the hundreds of thousands of New Jerseyans that work for restaurants and hotels, and how critical those jobs are. And again, I want to repeat that when we have a crisis in our country, the vulnerable communities are truly suffering. And we're seeing what's happening to Black and brown businesses in our state, which do not have the same access to capital often, and are facing a real extreme crisis in the percentages of Black and brown businesses that will not open again. And so amidst all this, and I know we have House members on that will speak to that, I'm grateful to be partnered with Bob, because he and I know the larger picture here. We have got to try to get something real done and right now, and I think Senator Menendez and I feel that urgency. But we also know that 2021 is going to be a very long and tough year for our economy. And this is why my conversations with Senator Harris and members of Joe Biden's team really are about how are we going to have a long-term vision for getting the support we need to get our economy out of this trench. When you have even the Trump appointed head of the Federal Reserve saying that we need massive stimulus, or quote unquote, the effects will be devastating if we fail to do that. So, my work right now, I'm just literally coming out of a leadership meeting with the direct negotiators like Joe Manchin, really raking over what it's going to take to get something significant and substantive over the line, because we are getting tremendous resistance from Mitch McConnell and about 20 to 30 members of the Republican caucus who don't want to do anything, who don't believe $1 of stimulus should go. And in fact, right now, we're talking about a $900 billion number, but understand that about $500 billion of that is reprogrammed money that was already allocated in past acts. And so this right now is, compared to the need we have, anemic. But there are elements of it that could really make a difference. This weekend, I spent hours on the phone with my colleagues, and Mark Warner particularly, because he has been a partner with me on a lot of the work we're trying to do on this bill in particular to get help, not just PPP, but really make sure there's more robust grant money out there, and that we are really working with minority development institutions and community development finance institutions to get money to the smallest of restaurants and smallest of businesses, shops that are 20 people or less, which are some of the ones that are particularly hurting right now. It looks like we're going to be successful in getting some of that into that bill. Right now, it's being favorably looked upon. But I'm trying to work with Senator Daines, who's a Republican from Montana, to do even more robust work. We have a bipartisan bill to really support about $50 billion for small businesses of 20 people or less. And this is grant money, because a lot of these businesses don't need loans. They really need grant money. And as we know, as more and more restaurants are not able to operate at full capacity because of the health concerns, when you are forcing businesses into that situation, there should be grants to help them make it, to bridge them through that. And so that's something that we're really working on. And so I'm going to continue to stay in the scrum with Senator Menendez, fighting to make this as bold and robust as we possibly can. We understand the urgencies, not just for the businesses that are represented here, but for people up and down the state who are having every area of their lives affected, from schools to their holiday plans, to their health, to their ability to get even basic services that they need. This is going to be a difficult stretch, as the numbers in our state and across this nation will get higher and higher and higher. And so I'm grateful again to be partnered with Bob Menendez. He is fierce in these negotiations. We wish this could be more robust, but it is very important that this organization understand that should we get something done, and my hope is that we will get something significant done, it is important to have your voices helping us once we get it over the line. And the liability issue, understand, nobody here wants to see frivolous lawsuits. I mean, it's ridiculous. There should be clear standards, and businesses that hold to those standards should not have to worry about frivolous lawsuits. So far in our country, there's been less than 50 right now affecting businesses of the type that are here. Lawsuits in general. I mean, hell, I think our president has filed more lawsuits for his challenging this election than we have seen now against businesses around COVID. But understand that is the big get for a large part of the Republican caucus. I'm sure Bob can agree with this. And once they get that, their intention under Joe Biden to do more is going to be very limited. And if our Senate, again, is operating under the rules that we have right now and the leadership that we have right now, getting the next stimulus package is going to be very, very difficult. So my last message is we're going to need your help to make the case that something for the next 2 months, a stimulus package for 2 months, is not going to be enough to get our economy out of the ditch we have been in, because we've allowed the rates of this virus to be so much higher than every one of our peer nations, with the highest death rate and the highest infection rates, way out of loop, even with our neighbor to the north in Canada. And as a result of that, our businesses are suffering because we now know that there is a connection between health and wealth. So I hope, again, Bob and I will do everything we can, and I really do hope we can get your help in advocating, should we get this across the line, to get right back to the work of trying to do something for 2021, which is going to be a very difficult year for New Jerseyans and for our nation.
Thank you, Senator Booker. I appreciate it. We're going to go right to Congressman Gottheimer and then Congressman Smith. And I see we've been joined by, I know Congressman Malinowski was on before, I apologize, and Congresswoman Sherrill. So thank you. Congressman Gottheimer?
It's okay. I'll turn to Congressman Smith. He outranks me, so he gets.
Oh, okay. All right. Congressman Smith.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mary Lou, and thank you for bringing us all together, and for the great advocacy you and your colleagues have brought to bear in urging much more robust efforts to help the restaurant industry in particular, but small business in general, which, I mean, I come from a small business background. You know, it's the ability to meet payroll, the ability to be sustained over time, just doesn't happen when you don't have customers and when you're closed or partially closed. I know the imperative of protection is there, but it's always an open question is how far do you go in terms of people coming in, the number of people allowed into a restaurant, for example. So that's all open for debate, and it should be based on science, but it still is open for debate. You know, Bob Menendez mentioned all the fondness we all have for restaurants, and I certainly have it too. I had George Herbert Walker Bush come to Roman Hall when he was president. He loved it. You know, it's just the atmosphere. We all have favorite restaurants. I have them. We all do. And to see so many, and the number of calls we get, the number of letters, but especially phone calls, is just off the charts of people who are just not making it. So PPP, I thought, was an ingenious idea. It was a bridge. It was seen as a bridge to get us to a post-COVID world. Unfortunately, the bill that ran out on August 8th with $134 billion still sitting in the kitty remains untapped. There is a bill that Congressman Shabbat has introduced, and a discharge petition has been filed that I signed to at least minimally as a bridge for a bridge to get that money out. It's already there sitting to be expended. And unfortunately, we've been unable to at least get that out on the short term. I absolutely agree. We need a larger remedy to all of this. But you know, hopefully before we end this session, we will have, and hopefully by next week, a much more robust bill that's in the $1 trillion range. But that money could have been released right away. And I think that's unfortunate. The estimates are that there are 157,000 loans that were made. Forbes did an analysis and found that 1.46 million jobs were retained because of PPP. And I have talked to many, again, of the people in my district who own restaurants and own small businesses, and they couldn't be happier, but now very upset that the money isn't there for a next round of protection. We will get through this, I believe, hopefully sooner rather than later, but no matter how long it takes, that bridge has to be long enough and strong enough to sustain those employees. Because once a restaurant or small business goes out of business, the chances of coming back are very, very scarce and almost slim to none. You know, there are some great entrepreneurs who might find a way of putting it all together again, but we've got to have this bridge called PPP. So your advocacy is outstanding, and I want to thank you for that. But we keep hearing from the restaurants throughout my district, and all my colleagues are hearing the same very well-founded concern that we need to act, and we need to act right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman. Congressman Gottheimer?
Thanks so much, Mary Lou, and thank you for bringing us together and for your leadership, and Troy and Sean, thank you so much as well. And I'm grateful that not just a huge swath of our delegation is here, but our two great senators who do so much, not just for restaurants, but for our state every single day. So thank you, Senator Menendez and Senator Booker. You know, obviously, as was said, it is beyond a difficult time for our state, and not just for restaurants, but for so many families, so many small businesses, and our communities. And the fact is, this group has been since day one really on the front lines fighting to make sure New Jersey has what it needs. But we all know how tough it is. The statistics that you brought up, Sean, which I saw in the survey of more than 10,000 restaurants have closed since the last one you conducted in July. 17% of restaurants, more than 110,000 establishments in the country. But according to reports in New Jersey alone, more than 23% of independent restaurants in the Garden State have already closed. You think about how many jobs there are, how many people, not just who own the restaurants, but as Senator Menendez says, all those who work in the restaurants every single day, and all their families and their livelihoods. And so it is with cases spiking and facing flu in winter, this is going to be a very tough time these months ahead. So we've just got to work together and got to do everything we can to get our country moving forward. We're focused here, obviously, on the next few weeks on trying to get, as the senator said, a down payment done, which to me is the key word. This is just an emergency short-term relief package that we must pass to help our restaurants, to help our small businesses, to help our families who are hurting with unemployment, those who are out of work, nutrition for food. We have so many people who are in lines in food pantries for the first time in their lives. Nearly 40% have never been on a food line before and are now on one to try to get help. And so with eviction notices coming, if we don't act now, if we don't do something to help, again, in this short-term emergency period to get us into the new administration for more action, which will obviously be necessary and also urgent, I think it would be a huge dereliction of our duty and our responsibility to the country. So I know many of us are coming together around this short-term package. It's $908 billion. As you mentioned, the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House has been working, but with many other Democrats and Republicans in the House, and then with a group of senators. And one other piece of this is so important, which is really relying on Senator Menendez's SMART bill, which a few of us also worked on to try to make sure that our state and local governments get help as, again, another down payment on a piece of what we need much more of, but something just to help us, our cops, our firefighters, our teachers, through and our local communities get through a very tough time, our transit systems, which are really in difficult shape. So you look at our schools, which this legislation also helps get the K-12 schools, and with childcare, there's more that's needed, but I think this is an essential down payment. And when it comes to restaurants, and obviously I supported the Restaurant Act, but there's going to be provisions in this legislation from a PPP perspective, a second round of PPP to help our small businesses with deductibility, making sure that there's no additional taxes on the first round, and which is key, and to make a simplified, very simplified process for forgiveness on the first round as well as we head into the second round. All things that are key to our small businesses that are just hanging on by a thread right now, and we've got to be there for them, for restaurants and all of our small businesses in our communities. As you know, the final pieces of this particular package are still being worked out, but we'll have something released, I'm hoping today, some more details on that, which are key. And the other piece here that was mentioned, which I think is essential, which is the hopeful part of where we are, is the vaccine. And with distribution beginning imminently, I think that's the hope side of this. We get through this to try to get to the other side, get people vaccinated, which is going to be key. We need resources to make sure we're able to get those vaccines out, and of course, help our hospitals, for our frontline healthcare workers in the meantime as we get there, which I think is a very, very key part of this, especially as we're heading into the height of the crisis, the height of the pandemic. So I'm going to continue doing everything I can. I know my colleagues are too, to push to get something done now before we get home to help our great restaurants, to help our small businesses but to help our families who are really, really in need in our local communities who need so much help. Momentum is building. I think we will get there, but I know it's not easy. And I just want to thank you all for your assistance publicly helping push us across the finish line. So thanks for having us here today. Thank you.
Don't worry, I will be back next year. I'm not going away, so you'll hear from me again. But I do want to thank you for being part of the Problem Solvers Caucus, you and Congressman Smith. We're going to go to Congressman Kim. Welcome.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I just want to just thank everybody for coming together on this to be able to just show our collective support for restaurants, for the hospitality sector and industry. It's just so important right now. Just as many of my colleagues have mentioned, just we're seeing it in our own neighborhoods. It really comes down to this word community. And we know that when we think of community, we so often think about the restaurants that thrive and make our, give the character to our own neighborhoods and to our own streets. So these are the things that we want to make sure we're focused on. I've certainly been working on that as a member of the Small Business Committee, focused on everything we can do to support our small businesses, our restaurants and our bars and others going forward. But I just wanted to take a little bit of a different direction. As we know, we need to get this done. We need to get this done before the end of the year. And I appreciate the leadership that Josh and Senator Menendez and Booker and Chris Smith and others have been doing on this front. And I'll continue to work with them. But also, when I hear and talk to restaurant owners here in my own district, there is this very strong message as well that what we're looking at here isn't just about trying to rewind the clock back to February 2020. This is an opportunity for us to try to make sure that we are strengthening, laying a strong foundation for the industry going forward, trying to do what we can to make it a stronger, more resilient industry moving forward in that type of way, and really trying to strengthen the ability for entrepreneurs and others to be able to move forward. So I really want to make sure that we are focused, of course, on keeping our restaurants afloat, especially through such a tough winter. But we also need to make sure that we think about where we want the trajectory to be going coming out from this pandemic, and what we can do to just really make sure we can strengthen it. We knew there were a lot of problems in the restaurant and hospitality sector even before this pandemic, and this is an opportunity for us to really engage on those issues as well. So I just wanted to throw that type of angle out there as a way for us to think about this going forward. So again, I'll keep this short as I know we got others looking to speak. Thank you for letting me have an opportunity here.
Thank you so much. Congressman Malinowski, and then we'll end with, I see she's on the phone. So Congressman Malinowski.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mayor Lou. Great to see all my colleagues. I think we're all pretty much on the same page on this issue. My guiding principle is that we can't save the economy or our small businesses if we don't crush the pandemic. And the reality is that you can't crush the pandemic without asking some of our businesses to make extraordinary sacrifices, particularly those businesses, obviously, that rely on people congregating indoors. And so whether it is the government telling restaurants and bars and entertainment venues to shut down, or consumers voting with their feet because they're just not comfortable congregating in the way that we might have been under normal circumstances, there's an obligation here, as others have said, to make sure that we are helping those small businesses that are most hard hit right now with the targeted assistance that they need to be made whole. And it would be unconscionable, I think all of us agree, for Congress to leave without doing our part, our responsibility here, not as the public health authority, but as the masters of the purse, the authority that has the ability to say that our restaurants can get through the winter, even as we ask them to make these kinds of sacrifices. And right now, we only have two options. There's the third option of not doing anything, which is not an option. So the only two are the fully bipartisan proposal that Congressman Gottheimer and others on both sides have put forward, which is not enough, but does at least some of everything that we need, including support for PPP, our folks who have lost their jobs, our state and local governments, enough to get through the winter, or a fully partisan proposal that Senator McConnell has put forward in the Senate that does virtually none of what we need. So to me, the choice is absolutely clear. I would like to do more. I'm a strong supporter of the Restaurant Act. I prefer to do things simply rather than in a complicated way. And so as this is negotiated over the coming days, I would love there to be something specifically targeted at the restaurant industry, and I'll be advocating for that. But at the very least, let's get this bipartisan compromise passed, so we will have done our duty to get us through the winter to a new administration, when I trust all of you will be helping us advocate for the final round of relief that will be needed before a vaccine brings us back to normal. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And yeah, you know, that's why in my opening remarks, I said, please don't let perfect get in the way of getting something done, because, you know, all these people, and I hear from them every day, hundreds of them, that are desperate, and they're trying to do whatever they can to keep their back of house employees working. And, you know, that's where takeout and delivery became so critical. And it is overwhelming and sad when you do hear these stories. And I hope you'll hang in to listen to Mayor and to Kirk to talk a little bit about, because this isn't just, as I said, about the restaurants and their owners. This is about the employees, and those are New Jersey jobs. And those are the people that need our help and your help. And just a quick side note, I was working with Kim Guadagno at the Phil to do something for our restaurant employees, because as you said, so many of them are on the food line for the first time, and they need our support, and they need our leadership. So I'm going to turn it over then to Congresswoman, certainly last but not least, Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. And then again, I hope you'll hang in to listen to Kirk Ruoff and Mayor Chetta. I apologize, my phone is ringing.
Oh, no worries. Well, thank you so much. And it is hard to go last with this group, because I think so many people from the delegation have eloquently talked about what's going on in the state and in the districts. And it is wonderful to have such a strong delegation led by Senator Menendez and Senator Booker in the Senate, and everyone in the House fighting so hard for New Jersey. You know, I have heard from the start from restaurants, and I will say that I think the summer provided a little bit of relief, provided a little bit of opportunity for many of our restaurants to open up outdoors. But many of the restaurants in my district that had been able to do some of that had been able to put tents up in parking lots or move into the street, are now closing. They can't handle the colder weather and the new outbreak of coronavirus. So, you know, having our restaurants and hospitality businesses in the next COVID relief package is a priority. Our businesses are in a state of crisis, and you know, our restaurants, our downtowns, our main streets, that's what make New Jersey so special. So I'll tell you, I had heard from people recently at Cereso's Kitchen in Chatham, and Karen and Jimmy telling me about shutting their doors at the beginning of the pandemic. And then about how much the PPP and EIDL loans helped enabling them to keep employees on the payroll, and how they pivoted to offer takeout family dinners and open outdoor dining. But they also expressed how worried they are about the winter, when the outdoor dining area they created on Main Street will cease to be an option. And the 25% capacity of their indoor dining area just isn't enough to keep them whole. It's something that I hear about from restaurant owners in North Jersey again and again. From our brewery in Montclair to the ice cream store in Caldwell, our restaurant and hospitality industry needs more help. In fact, Jockey Hollow in Morristown just recently closed its doors until 2021, while other restaurants like Lorenzo's and Woodland Park have closed completely and won't be reopening. So it's clear we need another COVID relief package. Without the additional support from Congress, more New Jersey residents are going to lose their jobs. They'll lose the businesses they've spent their entire lives or even generations building and putting blood, sweat, and tears into. And it would be such a crime to have them lose those businesses now, because we are so close to the finish line. When we know a vaccine is in sight, we've just got to get people through the winter right now. I was proud to co-sponsor the Restaurants Act, which will provide the $120 billion to support hard-hit restaurants, and which, as you've heard, our senators and my colleagues in the House are supporting. As well, I'm co-sponsoring and strongly advocating for the Save Our Stages Act, which will also get critically needed relief to live venues, again, helping our restaurants. And the next relief package must also include federal assistance for state and local governments, an issue that I've been proud to lead on with Senator Menendez. Towns in my district are using money from the CARES Act to provide grants to local businesses in the state through the NJRHA, which has created programs to help. The latest round of funding has focused in part on restaurants, but the federal government has to step up to help people throughout this. And I know each of my colleagues, as you've heard, feels the same exact way. So I do want to hear from you and from our mayor. So I'm going to turn it back over. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And just a quick note, Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman is in Appropriations Committee, and she just wanted to share her strong support for providing the much needed assistance to the restaurant and hospitality industry as part of a COVID relief package. So I just want to make sure I read that. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Kirk Ruoff of the Turning Point, who probably has restaurants in some of your districts. And if you haven't been, it's great breakfast and lunch.
Thank you, Mary Lou. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to our delegates and share a little bit about the Turning Point story. The Turning Point's a 22-year-old multi-unit breakfast and lunch restaurant. At the height of the business before the pandemic, we employed over 800 people. When the pandemic hit, we had to terminate over 600 members of our teams. It was devastating. But after we received the PPP loan, and with the return to warmer weather, we were actually able to reemploy almost all of them. Now we're going into the winter and there's no funding, and we're going back the other way. Last week, we had to reduce our staff by 50, and it really breaks my heart because you have to look at the season that we're in. The season not only being the holiday season, where people need the extra money to buy gifts, but also the winter season where a lot of our vulnerable employees don't have an opportunity to find jobs elsewhere. These jobs are typically as landscapers or in nurseries or on farms. They aren't hiring either. So these people are left without jobs, and they often find themselves on the food lines. We at the Turning Point, we do whatever we can. We open up the back door, we empty out our refrigerators, we make sure that our members at least have something to eat for their families. But it really does break my heart. Like I said before, we are a multi-unit restaurant group. I started this business back in 1998. I was the person who took the order, cooked the food, and washed the dishes. I worked the long hours. And if you're lucky enough in today's world to be a publicly traded company, you do have access to the public's capital, which is a great thing. But whether you have 1 restaurant, 5 restaurants, or 10 restaurants, the need is there, and it's just a multiple of the need. When a single restaurant closes, you lose 30 to 40 jobs, and that's heartbreaking. But when a multi-unit restaurant closes, you lose hundreds of jobs. The only thing I ask of the politicians is don't penalize the hard-working years of building a business. And each of our locations operates as its own independent community restaurant. Hopefully, the legislators will look to direct the funding to a need-based restaurant model based off of revenue decline and not just an arbitrary number of how many units or how many employees are there, because it's across the board the need. What also makes this an extremely difficult time is the unwillingness of the landlords to give deferrals or abatements as they did in the spring. I think most of the restaurant owners that I talk to that actually don't own their properties and have leases in place, they relied on their goodwill, their years of goodwill to go and to get some type of deferrals or abatements. The conversations I've had on the second round going back to these landlords is not as receptive. I think they've made up their mind that they've already given once and they're not going to give again. This is going to lead to the default process and eventually evictions. So right now, the general feeling of myself and the restaurant owners is without current guidance from Washington, we are going to return to the cold, dark days of the beginning of the pandemic. And when indoor dining is at less than 25%, or in some cases across the country, completely closed, you have no other choice but to close your doors completely and go into hibernation mode and hope for the best. And it's nothing that we want to do. Hospitality is in our blood, and we want to serve the public. The second thing I wanted to touch on really quickly is the importance of liability protection. We're following all CDC guidelines and state guidelines when they're even more stringent than the CDC guidelines. We've spent thousands of dollars getting our restaurants ready inside and outside to stop the spread of COVID. We recently received a correspondence from a team member that had contacted an attorney concerning his rights as a quarantined employee that may have had close contact with an individual who may have had close contact with another individual. It was interesting that his first call was to an attorney rather than his doctor around whether he had the rights to come into work or not come into work, or whether he had the rights to lose his job or keep his job. So I think that we're on a little bit of the beginning of a snowball rolling downhill when it comes to potential frivolous litigation. So that's all that I have really from my end, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I have to say. Thanks.
Great point what you said. Restaurants and small business, retail. When I say restaurants, we're talking restaurants, hotels, retail. We're labor intensive, right? For a restaurant to generate money requires a lot of employees, unlike, say, a tech company that can make $1 million with 3 people. It's very different. So when you are thinking about that number of employees, and I've often said that to the governor when he did his EDA loan, that 50 full-time is really a small restaurant. So it's not even a good sized diner covers that. So last but not least, Mayor Chetta, a board member of ours at Infinity Hotel Group.
Good morning. No vacancy, sold out. Those were words of the past. For the last 8 months, it's been high vacancy or closed. The hotel industry in New Jersey is in survival mode and barely surviving. The industry remains on what some describes as the brink of collapse. With some slight sign of hope over the summer, we were again knocked down when the COVID numbers increased, came roaring back, and our guests did not come back. Our contractors that were there over the summer, our tourists that were there over the summer, in small numbers, are vanished. Good morning. I'm Mayor Chetta, a second-generation hotelier and Principal and Chief Development Officer of Infinity Hotel Group. Based in Camden County for over 40 years, I've grown in this industry and business with my family. We own and manage hotels in the southern part of the state and eastern Pennsylvania. We have been in New Jersey in Camden County since 1981. And as the industry and as a family, we weathered many storms, many recessions, many issues, challenges. The 80s, the 90s, early 2000s, 2009. We stayed strong and survived. We held hands as an industry. We held hands as a family. This crisis is different. There's been a historic drop in travel demand. COVID-19 has affected every one of us in every sector across the globe. The hotel industry and restaurant industry are amongst the hardest hit. We all know the crisis is unprecedented, continues to move quickly, and yet deeply uncertain. Vaccine in sight, when, how will the travelers return? When will guests return to the dining tables? In our state, the devastation of COVID-19 for the hotel industry, we've seen hotel revenues drop over 65%. This not only has effect on the hotel businesses, but also on the taxes paid to our state and local and federal governments. We've lost over 50% of our staff as a state. One thing is certain. The only way to stop this, continue this, keep the lights on in the hotels, your support is needed urgently to help this industry survive that has been deeply and forever devastated by this pandemic. We have seen things like shelter-in-place restrictions, travel policy changes, and willingness to travel, but there's going to be structural changes to our industry as well. Video conferencing, in-person events, and increased confidence in work-at-home policies. We're resilient. Instead of closing hotels at the beginning of the pandemic, we stayed strong. Renting a few rooms a night, we were there to offer rooms to those doctors, nurses, and those who were working 12-hour shifts and wanted to stay safe from their family members. It wasn't about the money, it was about serving our community. We were there for those who needed to quarantine, for those truck drivers delivering food and groceries to local supermarkets, the ShopRite and Acme's in our local towns. And we were there for the homeless as well. We have an industry want to continue to serve our state, our residents, and keep those employed that work on our teams. With the hoteliers responding on a survey recently, a few weeks ago, by the American Hotel and Lodging Association, 47% of hotels may close in the next 6 months if we do not have relief. And nearly 1/3 of them said that they may only survive 1 to 3 months and be forced to close and even see the days of bankruptcy. We need to keep these 1,100 hotels in our state with 105,000 hotel rooms open, keep those 182,000 hardworking residents employed. It's projected that no relief, we're going to lose 40% of those jobs again from those that we've already lost. We know travel will return one day. Companies plan to turn off their travel restrictions in phases. Travelers will hold their hands and return to the streets as their family feels fit. But we need your action now to get to that day. Action to stop the industry from losing 400 workers an hour. So the 1 hour we've been on this call, another 400 hotel workers have lost their job. We need to stop them from closing their doors. We all know that economic relief and policies is what will help us survive through this. Keep the hotel doors open, keep the restaurants open for the post-pandemic era. We need your help, please. Timing is critical. Liability protection is key. Second round of PPP is key. Extended relief from troubled debt restructuring. Banks are unwilling to help us because of the classification of loans. These are simple fixes. There's people out there willing to help. Lenders would like to help. Unfortunately, they're threatened or they feel the inability to help because the loans may be classified and therefore affect their balance sheets. We need relief for CMBS loans, for those loans and the commercial mortgage-backed securities that many larger hotels have, and the lenders wanting to foreclose and move forward with takeover of the properties. This is important. My family, I was brought up in this industry from, going to, like Kirk said, cleaning the tables, cleaning hotel rooms, checking the guests in, delivering ice to a hotel room, transferring phone calls. This is what I know. This is my industry. This is what my children have grown up in. 8 and 12 years old, they see daddy minimally at home because we're out serving our teams, serving our staff to keep the hotels open. We've had to make changes, but we need help. We've tried our best, we're doing our best day to day, but we need your help and we need it now. Please, I urge you to do whatever you can to help get us to the next level. Yes, this may be only a down payment. This may be the first step, but we need the first step to get to the second step. I appreciate your time and thank you for everything you've done and will continue to do for the hotels and the restaurants in your great state of New Jersey.
So thank you, Mayor. And, I'm going to close before we turn it over to press questions, just to thank all of you for being on this call. Here's just some numbers, 27,000 restaurants in the state of New Jersey, 1,500 hotels, between the two, 500,000 employees. Those numbers are significantly lost. And just like you're in your jobs because you want to serve the people of New Jersey. Our restaurants and hotels, the owners go into this because they want to serve the people of New Jersey and our visitors. So our industries are not, or our professions are not unlike yours. We just need help so that we can continue to do the work that we do, contribute to community organizations, support our local charities, hire local residents, and provide economic stimulus to the state of New Jersey. The restaurant and hospitality industry in New Jersey contributed $1.8 billion to New Jersey last year. That number is going to be significantly less. Over $120 million from the hotel lodging tax into the state of New Jersey. That number is going to be much lower. That's why, as our elected representatives, I appreciate your support and just ask again, I know I said this before, please, before Christmas, give us the Christmas present, the Hanukkah present that we all need. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Marshall for any press questions. Again, it's supposed to just be for industry people. However, if a congressional member or senator wants to answer a question, it's fine, but you're under no obligation. Thank you. Marshall.
Mary Lou, and thank you to our senators and members of Congress. I know many are toggling back and forth on Zoom between congressional committee hearings and this, so we appreciate you being able to join and stay on. Just a quick few notes before we take questions. If you're a member of the press and you want to ask a question, please just hit the raise your hand button and I will call on you and unmute you in the order that I see you. There's been some talk about specific numbers about restaurant closures and various things which come from a National Restaurant Association survey, of which I will send out to those who are on the call in the press, those specific numbers. So you will get that from us following the call. And lastly, if you do want the recording of this, please let me know, send me an email or chat me, and I'll make sure that we get that to you following the ending of this. So now we'll call on members of the press. I've got a few people in the queue already. First, we will go to Daniel Munoz from NJBiz.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Daniel.
Hi, thanks to everyone for doing this. I guess first for the congressional representatives and then for the restaurant owners. For the congressional representatives, it seems that what's being worked on is about half of what Secretary Mnuchin offered in October, about 1.8 trillion. Do you think it was wise for Pelosi to reject that? And I know some of you had said this is far from perfect. And do you think that businesses' legal liability protection that McConnell has sought is something that should be granted to businesses in light of all the surges and reports that many of the outbreaks are traced back to the workplace? For restaurant owners, for the Restaurant and Hospitality Association, we keep hearing that even with indoor dining, many customers simply aren't comfortable doing it. Do you think that loosening capacity restrictions will make a difference in light of the second wave? Do you expect restaurants will still go under even with this PPE aid, and how many, and also what restaurant specific factors need to be considered when calculating aid for restaurants specifically? Thank you.
Do any of our congressional members want to answer? If not, like I said, you're under no obligation. I didn't know if anyone wanted to jump in. I will take the Restaurant Association. So Daniel, again, and you might have to remind me, there has been outbreaks in workplaces, and where you've seen it in a restaurant, it's actually not in the restaurant. It is the restaurant staff, because they often are friends. They date each other. They hang out together outside of the work. And again, that's just another example of it being in unregulated spaces of where people are contracting the virus. There is a huge demand for Christmas because people would prefer to go in smaller groups to a restaurant where there's commercial ventilation and celebrate. So I think that, and I believe the governor mentioned it yesterday in his press conference about how it is important, because we know the restaurant and hotel industry has done sanitation before COVID. I mean, we are mandated by the state. We adhere to strict sanitation protocols. So yes, I think the consumer confidence, we saw it, it was great in the summer. People were out, people got used to going indoor dining, spaced out. And I think with the wave, it's creating a little bit of concern. But again, the industry does practice those safe protocols. And I think that there is a way that it is a safe place for people to get together. As far as how many people more, there is a projection. I can send you the statistics from the National Restaurant Association, who surveyed our members, so I can get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Danielle, can I just mention one thing very briefly?
Okay.
The art of lawmaking, sometimes people hold out and say they want it all or else they don't want anything. I can't stress how concerned I have been that $134 billion has sat in on the sidelines that had already been appropriated because of the August 8th sunset provision that was in the bill. I wish that was not in there, but there is legislation that would immediately free that up, that could have been freed up in September, October, providing PPP during all of these months. That said, there's blame and praise to go for both sides of the aisle. We need to get the best possible package immediately. I've talked to my leadership repeatedly about it, about what's going on in New Jersey, and especially in my district. And I think we will make progress. One of the problems that everybody, I think, realizes is that Senate rules are so difficult. The ability of one member to hold up bills, the filibuster and the like, that it makes, mere majority, which could probably have seen something pass sooner rather than this late, again, throws a monkey wrench into good lawmaking. But again, we could have had that money throughout all of this. And plus there's been blame, like I said, on both sides of the aisle for all of this. We need to come together. If it's not, the perfect is the enemy of the good. I can't tell you how many times I've worked on legislation in the past that all of a sudden you said that's a reasonable compromise. Let's get to the next year and work on, what we missed in this one. But I think something on the order of $1 trillion would be very reasonable to get it done immediately. And we've also, just for the record, we've had 2,000 individual casework problems that I've worked on and my staff on unemployment. And many of those folks do hail from the restaurant industry and the like, at least many of them. And the money has been there. There's been a difficulty with people getting how much they are entitled to at the state level. Part of it is antiquated software and the like. So we've worked on that. And so again, making whole, and as one of my colleagues, I think said earlier, and I won't go on any further, we just need to get to the point where when this thing is near an end or ended, there will be intact to the greatest extent possible all of these great employees who otherwise will be scattered to the four corners. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Daniel. Next, we are going to go to Elise Young from Bloomberg. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Elise.
Elise, you just have to unmute.
You there, Elise?
She might have to do *6.
Oh, you're on the phone. Yeah, *6, Elise.
We can, we have some other questions, so we will come back to her. I'll keep her hand raised. And next we will go to Michelle Post from the Press of Atlantic City. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Michelle.
Hi, hope you can hear me. I just wanted to mention that I am up in Marlton and I just ate at the Turning Point and it was wonderful. And I did not know that the Turning Point owner was going to be on today. My question, because we're Atlantic City, can folks talk about how the casino industry would fit into this, if at all, into the bills that have been proposed? Would they qualify, I guess? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I will, again, if any congressional member wants to jump on, I'm assuming because it's hospitality, there's restaurants, hotels, so they do qualify. It would be, if it depends on what metrics they're going to use, if it's going to go by percentage of loss, or if it goes by number of employees, then probably not. So I guess it depends on what finally comes out, what metrics they're going to use.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm gonna lower her hand. And next we will go to Joanna from NJTV, NJ Spotlight. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Joanna.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Can you tell me what the state and local tax losses have already been from restaurants and hotels that have already closed?
Until I couldn't tell you at the end of the year because obviously the year is not up. We can get you some estimates on quarterly taxes, but obviously we know significantly down, especially the lodging tax. There's huge loss in revenue there, and that goes into the general fund for the state of New Jersey. So we can, at the end of the year, we'll have a better analysis of that, and I can try and get you some quarterly information, Joanne.
Quarterly would be great, thank you. And just maybe an approximation of where we'll be.
Yep, absolutely. I'm right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Elise, I didn't see Elise log back on, so I'm assuming if she has a question, feel free to come back. Thank you, Joanna. And then we're going to go now to Christy, I believe from WCBS. Just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Christy. Awesome. Hello. Hi, everyone. Just wanted to know, what is the soonest, really, when is the soonest date that we would know if there is some sort of relief package, a stimulus or something going out to these businesses? What really is the date that soonest that we would know if this will be happening for businesses? Thank you.
Sean, you want to take that one?
Congress their goal is to adjourn for the holiday no later than probably the end of next week. I believe that they are probably likely to leave sometime Wednesday evening or Thursday morning. So we really are approaching the final days on something here. Congress, I know that a number of members have said they're willing to work until Christmas Eve if necessary, but we are looking at the end of next week as the as a drop dead date from our perspective on the restaurant side.
And by then you would know if it's happening or not. Like, we would know either result.
Correct. Once Congress adjourns, we know what we're going to see the final score, and we're going to know what that means for America's restaurants and hotels across the country.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christy. Next, we're going to go to Esther from the Bergen Record, NorthJersey.com. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks so much for doing this. You threw out so many numbers that I'd like to get a little bit less confused here. Without the help, without any financial help from the federal government, I'm not clear on how many restaurants or what percent of restaurants do you expect to close in New Jersey, and how many people will lose their job in the restaurant industry, did you say?
Sean, if you want to go, and then I can go.
Sure. So from the New Jersey survey that Mary Lou circulated, 36% of restaurant owners in the state say they are unlikely to be open if Congress does not do something in the next 6 months. And that was from a survey that was collected in November. 51% of restaurants in New Jersey are looking at temporarily closing their restaurant until circumstances change. The obvious challenge for that is for a lot of restaurants, even to temporarily close, they're still paying rent, they're still paying insurance, they're paying so many fixed costs. And with no revenue coming in, it makes it a much riskier proposition as to whether they will be able to reopen once the either state or the national circumstances make it easier for them to consider reopening.
Right. So if 36% of restaurants don't open, if help doesn't come, don't open within the next 6 months, how many restaurants in total in New Jersey would then have closed?
Well, and also, Esther, remember, that is not counting the restaurants that have already closed.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. With that, what are we talking about? So I know that you said, I think that, what is it, 23% have already closed?
What? No. Right now, he's saying 36%, and then we're estimating right now. Now, again, we don't know if they're permanent or temporary. Their number is there's probably another 8 or 10% that have already closed. Okay. But again, we don't know if that's permanent or temporary.
Okay. But whenever I've asked you, I believe that you have said that it's expected that 42% of restaurants in New Jersey will close because of COVID.
And that's correct. Yep, temporary or permanently. And so again, you don't know until the end of the year and when the final numbers are done. But at this point, based on the survey, 36% are estimating that they are going to close.
Within the next 6 months, within the next months, without 8 to 10% have already closed.
Yes, that they're probably have already closed.
Right. Okay. And I guess you have no way of knowing how would that aid change those statistics?
Well, it would give them the needed the PPP and the funding to continue to operate, to continue to pay their employees.
I know. No, I understand that how it would help. how would it lower that statistics to say, well, if we get that aid, then only X number would close?
Oh, yeah, I don't think that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't. That's.
Yeah. And what we're talking about here is a 1.8 trillion package. Is that what we're talking about?
The package that's being discussed right now is there's a plan by congressional moderates that is for so Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle, that's for $908 billion.
Okay.
And that plan is really just a starting point. Speaker Pelosi was looking for a package of roughly 1.8 trillion.
Okay.
Senate Majority Leader McConnell was looking for 500 billion. So this would be a midpoint offered by a bipartisan group of members that's really captured a lot of interest here in Washington.
Okay, so I understand this roundtable discussion. I'm sorry if I seem dense here, but is it to champion any one of these? Is it to champion the compromise, the 908 billion, just to do something?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, we want, as I said in my earlier comments, we don't want perfect to get in the way of getting something done. And this has the best chance. I assume Sean and Troy, you can jump in. You're more tied in, but this has the best chance of getting something done. And we want something done.
Okay.
I would agree. This is Troy. It's been far too long since Congress has followed up with the next round of relief to frankly all segments of society, but specifically to the hospitality industry. And as was pointed out, there's money sitting on the sidelines that needs to be reallocated. And now is the time before we have this break over the holidays and a new Congress and a new administration comes to DC.
So if nothing is done by next Wednesday, if I'm correct, then you actually have to wait till Congress comes back together?
Congress will reconvene early January, but they're unlikely to pass anything meaningful until President-elect Biden is sworn in on January 20th. Right. So from a practical perspective, they could come together and pass something in those early weeks. What is more likely is talks will begin in earnest, or they'll sort of stay on hold until the president-elect is sworn in and he can enter those talks directly as president.
This is a clarion call. Like, it's so dire that you got to do something really now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Esther.
Thank you, Esther. We are then going to move to Joe Hernandez from WHYY in Philadelphia. Go ahead, Joe. Unmute yourself.
Hey there. Thanks for doing this. Two questions. One, you talked a lot about federal aid. I'm wondering if there's anything at the state level that you want. Can the state government do anything to make this any better? And the second question is about the liability. Restaurants don't want to be liable for frivolous lawsuits. Or are we talking about stripping the ability of all employees from filing lawsuits over unsafe conditions? Can you talk more specifically about what that is?
Yeah, I'll take the state and then I'll turn it over to Sean. I know he's been working on liability, Troy. So the state, the governor put that $30 million EDA loan and grant, I apologize, and then just added an additional $60 million to it. We believe there's some more CARES money. So yes, we would love to see more money and more grant programs through the New Jersey EDA, as well as the county grants that have been out there that I believe Congresswoman Cheryl talked about. However, that's really, small potatoes compared to what the real need is. And I think the governor's been very explicit about the need for more direct aid. So we hope that obviously if the state of New Jersey gets more money, there'll be more additional grant programs to our small business community. Sean, you want to talk about liability?
Sure. The liability issue really is if a restaurant, and speaking for Troy, or a hotel is complying with all applicable federal, state, and local health codes. If a restaurant or hotel is doing everything right, they at least need a basic safe harbor from litigation where someone's suing them saying that they contracted coronavirus as a result of being there. If it's a bad actor, if it's someone who hasn't complied, they should not get a safe harbor from this. They should still be available to be brought into court. But the restaurant industry in particular, we are such a highly regulated industry when it comes to food sanitation, when it comes to safety. If we're complying with all of those things, restaurants right now need some kind of safe harbor to ensure that they're not dealing with drive-by litigation.
Yeah, and I would concur from the hotel perspective. It's especially important for our segment of hospitality, given the nature of the business and the service that we provide, that people actually stay overnight within our facilities. So it's very important. We've taken this very seriously since early in the pandemic. Many of our leading brands in our industry have rolled out increased safety and health cleanliness programs, and we have also done that as an association with the AHLA Safe Stay program to ensure that hotels are clean and safe places to both visit but also to work.
All right. Marshall, any other questions?
That is all the hand raised I had. So if you are a member of the press, now is the last chance to raise your hand and ask a question for today.
Obviously, many of you have my phone number. Since I've spoken to many of you over the last 8 months. Again, I would like to thank both Senator Menendez and Senator Booker and all of our congressional members, Congressman Gottheimer, Congresswoman Sherrill, Congressman Kim, Congressman Malinowski, Congressman Smith, our two industry professionals, Kirk Rolfe of the Turning Point, Mayor Chetta of Infinity Hotel Group, and Troy Flanagan of the American Hotel and Lodging Association, and Sean Kennedy of the National Restaurant Association. For those congressional members that are still on, I appreciate you hearing our message. And for those of you that talk to me, know that I'll be following up with you and you'll be getting my information and you'll hear from me and hear from me. So I want to thank you for your time. Marshall, thanks for helping me moderate this. And for those of you that I don't talk to, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. Stay healthy. And please visit your restaurants, stay in local hotels. We have some of the best in New Jersey. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
Thank you.